3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone? You are watching the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with Skip and Ash, hosted here on the Ash and Comics channel. This is episode 3, four episodes if you count the little pilot thing that we did. And this is, I gotta tell you, my most excited thing that I look forward to doing online on YouTube every other week, Mondays at 7:30 p.m., except for today. There was a little bit of a delay for technical reasons. I do apologize. We'll try to keep the schedule as tight as possible. With me, as always, is the man that you're all here for, the legendary Skip and Tosh. How are you doing today, Skip?
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of pressure, man. Being a legend, that's a lot of weight.
I gotta
My
elevate you
friend.
up so you can rise to that bar.
You know what? I appreciate it. I'm one of those people that I do like to rise to the occasion. I believe challenges were made to be overcame, not to break us, but to build us. So I'll take that, man. I'm doing great. As you said, this is something. Of just about all the things that I do on the internet, from streaming to shows to podcasts, that I'm always looking forward to. This is always marked on my calendar. It's a happy day. Talking indie comics with my good man Ash. So, man, I'm ready to jump into it, man.
Oh man, one of the things I love about this show, besides talking to comics with you, is this is the show where I'm always reading the best comics in research for. It's forcing me to read the best comics. Now, when I do comics for other reasons on my channel, sometimes I'm like, this isn't going to be good. I'm just reading it for other reasons, and I'm salty. But this is the show I'm never salty. This is where I get my enthusiasm, and I look forward to reading these books. And this one here on the cover for the thumbnail this week, we see our man. Who's that boy? What's his name again? Because my memory's shot.
Master Wee Lun.
Wee Lun, that's right. He is from God, I'm biting all over the place. He is from our book Firepower, is one of the feature books that we do here on the show, and I love this book. What did you think about this week's book?
This week's book was, I don't know if I could have asked for a better follow-up issue to Firepower number 5 than what we got in this. This book has a tendency to continue to wow me, almost like it was my first time reading it again. So many things about it, that we'll get into and we'll really dive into, really stood out to me. And it is one of those books, simple as it is, as simple and straightforward as the storyline is, where I read it and I'm full of wonder. Wow. Oh yeah. What? Like all of those audible, audible reactions come out of me every time I read Firepower. So man, it's just so good.
Nice.
What about you? What were what did you think about it? I know we're getting ready to dive in, but
Yeah,
just what was your gut reaction to it?
My gut reaction was, this is the best issue to date since the Prelude graphic novel. This is the book that I was kind of looking forward to. I just had faith that Kirkman was going to do this, like he was going to get to this. It's not a secret that I read that Prelude graphic novel and I loved it. And then when I started on issue 1, I was kind of like, record scratch. Like, wait, what are we doing here? Like, that weird 15-year time jump was a little weird, because not only was it a time jump, but it was a completely different setting. It felt, in all intents and purposes, this series we're reading, Firepower, is a sequel to the Prelude graphic novel. I think maybe Kirkman should have maybe billed it that way. Just like had that novel and been like, boom, here's a one and done graphic novel, and now we're going to tell the sequel, because it really does. It has some connections to that past, but it's a different story. And I was a little bit off, and I was like, okay, now we're doing the family thing. It's a different theme than that book, but he's tying it together. And I was like, I know if this is the book that he plans on doing, the graphic novel wasn't his big plan. That was sort of like his setup. Like, he planned on doing an ongoing series. So I was like, okay, we need to let the opening act unfold, and I think we're now into Act 2, at least of the first arc, and this is where in comics, most comics are always written in Act 2, like ongoing comics. You just stay perpetually in Act 2. You never have a beginning. You never really have an end. Whoops. You just keep going, and obviously Kirkman's not going to do that. Firepower will come to an end, just like Walking Dead did eventually, and all of his books will. And that's a good thing about indie comics. I love to talk about mainstream never ending, just going on, Batman forever and ever. But indie books, I do like being able to get that kind of long form storytelling you get like in a novel. I don't know how many books this is going to go, but I'm here for the ride.
Absolutely.
So,
no doubt about it.
I got the book up on screen here. We're going to be able to talk about it. Before we do, you enjoying a nice little beverage? That's a little tradition here on Ashen Comics. We always have to enjoy comics with a beverage. What you got going on over there?
Oh yes, I came prepared. I wanted to get the vocal cords warmed up while also enjoying something that's a little more seasonal. I'm a sentimental guy, not so much a seasonal guy, but things are changing as I continue to advance in my years. So tonight I've got myself a little bit of peppermint tea with a more than generous side of honey added to it. So I'm cruising on that, and it feels great, warming me up inside, getting the vocals ready, and very, 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 very tasty. Now you, my friend, I've seen you kind of go around the table with a bunch of different drinks. What are you enjoying over there?
I am
at
a
the moment?
beverage connoisseur. I love drinking things. Tonight I whipped myself up a Moscow Mule. It's probably not as good on the vocal cords as your tea. That's a smart idea. I hadn't really thought about that. But nonetheless, I think the ginger ale aspect maybe will help. We'll see. But that's what I got going on. Hopefully, people in the audience listening in have something to refresh themselves with while they enjoy talking about comics. So let's go ahead and just kind of fill people in real quick synopsis on what's going on with Firepower. I know they've probably watched the previous episodes, but there might be a new person or two.
Indeed. And we want to continue to encourage everybody to read the book and kind of follow along with us as we can. I know some people like to rate for the trade, but we don't want anybody to miss out on this conversation, especially as we start to, put more and more attention towards the chat and everybody that joins us live. So please read the book with us and fill up the chat with your thoughts as well. But for people who may not have been following along so far, now we're in issue number 6. As Ash was saying, this feels like the beginning of Act 2. And through teamwork and some fireballs, Owen and Katie are able to ward off 2 Dragon's Claw assassins, only to rush to their kids' defense back at their home at the hands of 2 others. Owen is pushed to his limits, but the family is able to escape safely from Reggie's house. Reggie being, or escape to Reggie's house. Reggie being Kelly, the protagonist's wife. That's her partner from work, as she is a law enforcement, and that is her patrol partner. But once they get to Reggie's house, which was the kind of the cliffhanger from the previous issue, Wei Lun, Master Wei Lun, finally makes his presence known, and that was Owen's master that he learned from when he went to the Temple of the Flaming Fist in the prelude that Ash was talking about, and trained with the rest of the Flaming Fist clan out there. So the stage has been set. Master Lun had left, and Owen had found out that he had left the Flaming Fist Temple, and now he's shown up, and Master Lun is letting everybody know he's here now, and that's where we start off in this issue.
All right, very good. So for everyone that isn't familiar with this book, shame on you. No, just kidding. It is a really good book. And again, we encourage you, jump in. We're going to be talking about this book month after month and just fanning over it. It's really a book to be a fan of. This is by Robert Kirkman, Walking Dead fame, Oblivion Song, Die Die Die. He's done a bunch of stuff. Invincible, soon to be coming on Netflix, and Chris Samney, the artist, who I previously wasn't a big fan of until this book, and he's kind of won me over. I think he's very well suited for this book, and then of course, nice colors by Matt Wilson. And here we go. So, let's see. You want to go ahead and maybe start off with the highlights, and I'll get the graphics going.
I would love to. Um, out the gate, you guys heard me earlier talking about my gut reactions, the audible gasps and oohs and ahs and whatnot. One of the very first things to highlight to me that I enjoyed about the writing, is Owen has not seen Master Lun in quite some time. So for him to be inside of his wife's partner's apartment, look up and see Master Lun, he has this face like, hey, this was my guy. This was the person that was, taking me through. He was a complete jerk to me at first. I mean, he was just a jerk to him in the last episode. Owen, I hate that name. But still, they have a bond. As I talked about, the last pair of Jordans that we saw Wei Lun in the prelude was the pair of shoes that Owen had on the cover of issue number 1. Like, all of those things were not just put in there and thrown in there. It's all part of the plan. But with him saying, and seeing that face, and we're like, oh, a look of relief, a look of joy. He just leaps right at him and just puts him in like some sort of grounded, like armbar type deal on the ground and just has him pinned down. And he's looking for answers because obviously his family has been in peril. He knows that there's 2, possibly 3 different groups of ninjas that have kind of been after them for various reasons. So that was the first thing that stuck out to me, is that Owen actually got a leg up, or an arm up in this case, on Master Wei Lun and had him on the ground. And then we also see Reggie's partner, who was Kelly's partner for an amount of time that hasn't been determined, but to see him take a martial arts pose, and I like her face, her reaction to it, like like you know martial arts, kung fu. Those 2 parts right out the gate, I think were some really really big highlights for me. I really really enjoyed just seeing those. It just kind of stuck out to me. Even the forms, as someone who had studied martial arts for majority of the first half of my life, up until about the age of 13, taekwondo, judo, jiu-jitsu, shoot, I'm trying to, I think I said taekwondo. There was another form of karate that I had practiced as well. Just all of those things, even capoeira for a little while I was practicing. So to see the forms and to see them so well, the pose is so good. It just stuck out to me, man. I just really, really, really was taken by that. What about you, Az? What are some of the first things that jumped out to you about this issue when you jumped into it?
Pretty much what you just talked about. I really liked the Kirkman is such a solid comic book storyteller. I mean, he's not just telling good stories here, but he understands the medium. And I loved how each page ends in a sort of like almost like mini cliffhanger, like you get, if I'm flipping back to the book, and it's just like, when Owen looks at his master, and his wife's like, Owen, and he's like, huh? And you're like, okay, what's happening? Boom, that we get the next. Each page is almost like a story in of itself. And we get to the end of that page, and we see, the kids are like, "Well, my God, Dad, what's going on?" And the wife's just like, "Kids, stay back." And then we get the big reveal. Ta-da! Reggie is a student of the master too. You're like, what? What the heck is going on? Oops, I lost control of my computer for a sec. So I loved how that works. I think it's a weird thing to geek out about, but so many writers don't understand how to do that, how to have the beats hit in their storytelling. It's one thing to like write a story, but to be able to understand that at the end, the last panel on each page needs to like sort of reveal for the page turn, and that's something that a lot of maybe more amateur writers don't think about. I love this big reveal that Reggie is studying under the master. I was like, what? I did not see that coming.
Absolutely. All of those things stick out. And again, like you were talking about, just the beats, the hits. You want it to be a page turner. So you got to find the rhythm, just like you said, like a song. You kind of feel when the song is going to loop back around to, the chorus or the verse or all of those things. And Robert Kirkman, it just when it comes to comics, he is a pocket drummer, like it, but he knows when to hit the cymbals and all of that stuff too. It's really, really amazing. To go to another one of the highlights for me, it was just a few pages from there. I really want to highlight the fact that there's a generous amount of panels that have no words. Some of them only have action sounds,
Yeah.
and they may not even have that. But again, Chris Samney and Kirkman having that relationship, understanding this is a visual medium, the poses, the action itself tells a bit of the story, no words needed. But one of my favorite parts, I believe it's on about page 7, is they're having this conversation while they're talking. And, for those of us who watch Kung Fu movies, who watch martial arts movies, we know that even through, obviously it's choreography for them, but even through the fight, a story is being told with poses and blocks and strikes being thrown. But one of my favorite is like the rapid attack. So as Owen is doing different attacks that Master Wei Lun did not teach him, he's like, oh, you learned that from here. Oh, you learned that from here. He does like a very fast strike where it's just like multiple. It's almost like, for anybody who played Street Fighter, especially Street Fighter 2, E Honda, that 100 hand slap where it's just like his hand blurs because he's striking so fast. That's in the bottom right corner of that panel, and I just loved it. I don't know what to say. It's not some cosmic brain busting thing, but it just pulls it out of me. I just love everything about how they set up their conversation and how Owen is not telling Master Lun, but showing Master Lun, hey, I'm still on point and I've learned some new things. And he even surprised Master Lun with some of the things that he learned. And that was just furthering the story along, and their relationship and the understanding of where Owen is now since Master Lun has last seen him was really, really cool.
This page you're talking about here was a really cool page. One of the things that stuck out about me to me was this page had a very manga structure. There was a lot of influence here, a lot of the action lines that is prominent in manga to illustrate, intensity of action and things. Some of the blurring, especially the bottom 2 panels when we see Master leaping up in the air, the blurs under his feet to heighten that speed of motion. And you're right, the E Honda attack. What got me is I see that happening a lot in like Marvel comics and DC comics, and I'm just like, oh, stop trying to be like manga. It's please like. But here, I didn't feel that way at all. Here, I felt like, oh, cool. Like this felt like a really nice blend of Western style comics with manga, which also kind of felt appropriate, even though Kung Fu's not really Japanese. This is sort of a mythological kind of fake martial arts. It's Asian martial arts, and I was like, I just felt it really fitting, and I loved it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good call out too. There's a difference between mimicking and inspiration. As the quote goes, good artists copy, great artists steal. To copy doesn't take much effort, but to steal something, to take it and make it your own, almost, take possession of it, not just, photocopy it, is a difference. And what Chris Samney was able to do was put his touch on it. For anybody that's ever seen Chris Samney's work, you know what it looks like. You know that he has a style and whatnot, but he just didn't copy something else with his style and his idiosyncrasies. He had, almost grafted some of those influences in, and it comes across seamlessly, and it feels genuine, like Ash is saying. It doesn't feel like he's just trying to mimic something. It's genuine, and it adds to the story instead of pulling you out of the story and saying, oh, you're just copying this. It was really, really cool. Of course, naturally, about 2 pages later, I don't know what you there has to be a name for it, But again, I go back to Street Fighter because when you win in Street Fighter, you get that burst where it's like all the background fades out and there's just a light with the connection of the strike being the epicenter where it comes out of. And again, it just cool showing Owen, you know, that he's advanced. And again, he got another leg up on Master Wei Lun, you know, kind of rung his bell, so to speak. He's got the wee-hoo, wee-hoo. He's got
Yeah,
the stars
the
going
little
around
stars
on
is
his
funny.
head. Yes, I really like that part. And even, you know, the conversation, there's, you know, there's moments of levity within this where, you know, Kelly, his wife, you know, looks over at Reggie because, you know, they're in a strange place in their relationship now. Obviously, Reggie, her partner from her job, law enforcement, you know, they have a relationship. They put their lives on the line to protect the community that they work in. Well, on the flip side, Reggie has had this allegiance to Master Wei Lun, and, you know, from, you know, the prototypical martial arts, you know, um, master student relationship, we know that there is such a huge level of devotion that goes into that. So they're kind of in this weird place right now where they're like, you know, do we fight each other or do we watch? But Owen gets the, you know, gets the jump on Master Wei Lun, and she's just like, yeah, I taught him that. And Reggie's like, really? I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, he pretty much just uses kind of a street style move there. And at first when I was reading this book, I was like, because I too have a little bit of a martial arts background. So
Mhm.
while I'm no Bruce Lee or anything, you know, I can at least recognize martial arts and different, you know, techniques and things. And I was like, this is not really a martial arts type move. Like I was like, come on, Samney, do some research. Like, but then as you're kind of pointing it out, and I got to thinking about it, I'm like, well, she taught him this move. This seems to be something more like a more basic, you know, self-defense or street style type move
Yeah.
that a cop would know. This is something that
Yeah.
sometimes really good martial artists, they get caught up so much in their techniques and forms that becomes their weakness to be, you know.
Right.
And I was like, oh, actually kind of, and this is why I was like, oh, that's why he gets the lick on, you know, the master here, because the whole time he's like, oh, that's the crane kick from so and so, and you learn this, and he's constantly identifying everything he does, but he doesn't identify this. And I was like, oh, very subtle, nice.
Absolutely. Great call out. Yeah, exactly. You know, if you go by the book, you know, with disciplines like so many martial arts, that is exactly what they do. They go by the book. But the second that you go outside of the book, and yeah, you know, almost MMA style, you throw in a street move that, you know, they don't see it coming, catches them off guard. I think that's a very good call out, Ash. And I think you went over to the page that I was gonna
Yeah,
gonna
a little
point out
premature.
next. You know, and hey, no problem. You're seeing the future, my friend, and I'm just trying to catch up. But that's the part that they come to. You know, hey, like all this practice and that practice and this, like Owen just knocked all that out the way and rung his bell. He's like, I want the truth. You know, like, where did you go? Why did these people think that I took out gosh, I'm forgetting her name. It's his previous love interest. But, you know, why are all these people trying to kill me? You know, and I want the truth. And, you know, and he talked bad about the dragon again, as if the dragon wasn't real. And Master Wei Lun, we get a full splash page, obviously putting emphasis on the dragon, and he just kind of comes out to him and just kind of yells it. The dragon is real.
Yeah, the dragon is real. This has been one of the things that we've been theorizing about, Nick, since the Prelude graphic novel.
Yeah.
They talk about this dragon, but you never see a dragon, and you're like, is this really a dragon, or is it dragon in sort of the symbolic sense? You know, like martial artists tend to commonly, like, you know, like Bruce Lee was called the dragon, right? Is it that kind of dragon? Is it, you know, like not an actual beast, but like a being, like a person who's like a master, is the dragon? We still don't really know, but we know that the master here is saying, no, the dragon is real. And I do believe that this is a narrative element by Kirkman to communicate to the audience parts of his world building lore, so that we now as the audience know, as long as this is a reliable storyteller. I don't know, we sometimes it's red herrings, but this is now meant for the audience to go, okay, confirmed, dragon real. That's how I'm reading it.
Right. And yeah, no, same as well. And that's what I love also about where we're headed and where we're going in the story is that we got things set up from the prelude. And that's one of those questions. And obviously, well, maybe not so obviously. Maybe I shouldn't say that like it's such a foregone thing. The dragon being real, I can probably, lean closer to that being a foregone thing at this point. But if the dragon is real, what does that mean
Mm-hmm.
for the actions that Master Wei Lun has taken, leaving the Temple of the Flaming Fist and then joining the Scorched Earth clan? And we knew that, from the previous issue because he had a Scorched Earth clan tattoo on his forearm. And then obviously later in this issue, he comes and he talks about that a little bit more, but even then we still don't get the full story, which I love because that puts us in a place where where we get to come and do this show and theorize,
Yeah.
which we'll get to in a bit. But before we get to the theory portion, any other things that kind of really stood out to you in the issue, Ash? I know that there's one in particular that we're probably both going to get to here in a second.
Well, I mean, are we done going through the issue? Because there might be still more.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think there's a really, really big one that we didn't get to that I think we're going to get to. And that's obviously when some of the other, as they're trying to get the answers, right as Owen is going to start getting some solid answers, some of that truth he's been seeking, he's been fighting for. I mean, really the catalyst for his mission, even in the prelude, his driving motivation, the ninjas that we thought that they had dispatched from the restaurant when he and his wife were trying to reconcile at dinner, they show back up and then they start throwing down with everybody again.
Yes. And some points here before the ninjas show up, we get a little bit of story where the master is, one of my favorite parts of this book, was the reveal of like the dragon is real. We get the next panel and he says, "It's all real, Owen. All of it." And I don't know why I'm referencing this, but it kind of harkened back to one of my favorite moments of the Force Awakens when I was all jazzed up for the return of Star Wars. And there was that scene where Han Solo, says to the new blood, like the Force, it's all real, all of it. It's true. I forget exactly how he says it, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. Not going to go into a whole Star Wars discussion, but that was a little. This reminded me of that giddy feeling of like, ooh, and he plays on and he tells this story about how he finds Ling Zan, his lover from the temple, Owen's lover, finds this book that she had where she was kind of like documenting what she had found and she kept it secret. And it's a big revealer for the master. And he he's kind of red pilled, you could say. Yeah. He's like, all my whole life has been a lie, he says. Everything that he taught Owen, everything. And that's why he left. And so we, the reader, we see that he's become like a traitor because the whole time we were misled too. Because we saw the story through Owen's eyes. So we see Wei Lung as sort of the great teacher, the master. He's kind of the master Yoda, right? Like, he's telling Wei Lun the truth. Well, he was, to his point of view. And so when he comes back with the tattoo of the Scorched Earth, we're like, what? That betrayer. But one of the things I love how Kirkman does the storytelling here is he's not necessarily he's lying to you, but like in a good way. It's like, the whole Star Wars reference again. What I told you was true from a certain point of view.
Yeah.
And that's why I said like the whole dragon thing is like, the dragon is real. I'm pretty certain the dragon is real, but what is the actual dragon? We still don't know. And Kirkman does these things where he leads you kind of smoke and mirrors and it's like, oh yeah, this. And then he goes, oh, you misinterpreted what I said. I said this, and so you went down this path. But honestly, now that you have a more perspective and more of the stories unfolded, you see that what I was really telling you was this. And I like that a lot. And I like here how the master's betrayed. That's why we get this whole little backstory of why he had to leave. And it's real succinct. Like, Kirkman doesn't spend, lesser writers would have spent like a whole issue, blabbing about this whole thing. He wraps it up in a couple of pages, and then the ninjas come in and all hell breaks loose. And the master says, get your family away. I will, I will find you. And again, I'm gonna be the Star Wars nerd here. I can't resist ever putting Star Wars references, but this kind of reminded me of the Obi-Wan moment in Star Wars.
Right.
It's like get on the Falcon. Obi-Wan doesn't shout that or whatever, but in my mind, I'm feeling like here's the great master holding off the evil so the heroes can get away. And it doesn't feel like, it's not throwing that in your face like, ha ha ha, I copied Star Wars at all. This is purely on me. But like you mentioned earlier, good writers or good artists copy, great artists steal. I think that was how it went. But we get a really cool fight scene. I don't want to steal your thunder here. I'm not sure where you were leading up to, so you go ahead and take over.
You got it. We get the fight scene, and like so often, for a few different reasons. One, they have that connection. There is a relationship there. He doesn't want to leave. He knows that these ninjas are formidable. They've dispatched them now like twice, and they keep coming back. They are relentless. So he wants to stay and help and fight. And then the second part, the answers. He was so close. He was like, he got a morsel, of an answer. At least he got the answer to why Wei Lun has gone from being in the Flaming Fist to making the move over to the Scorched Earth clan. So boom, check that one off the list. But he really wants to know about his family and obviously other things. And then the ninjas cut that off. So he wants to stick around and help fight to dispatch them to get those answers. But Master Wei Lun, knowing what he knows and not having time to tell him, because Owen can throw the fireball because he's got the firepower. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, get out of here. You're too important. I know you want the answers, but we can't. We can't risk it. We can't risk you falling into their hands, even though you don't know what they would do to you. You don't know how important you are. You have to go. And Reggie is fighting along with him, kind of telling them the same thing, like, you guys get out of here. And finally, they listen. They start getting out of here. They're getting out of Dodge. And this something that I didn't expect to happen. I don't want to say so soon, but I love the storytelling and how it's set up. We just got Master Wei Lun back, but as Owen and Kelly and their son and daughter are finally starting to take the cue and leave, Master Wei Lun gets a fatal injury. He's fatally wounded.
Yeah, I did not see this coming. I was like, whoa, what the heck? The reveals in this book, I think Kirkman did like 4 major reveals in just this issue alone. That's crazy for modern day comic books, right? Usually you're lucky to get one in a single issue. Right. He goes 4. And it's not over. This isn't even the biggest reveal.
Nope.
I was like, what? But yeah, this got me. I was like, oh, and then and we can see on the screen here, he's getting stabbed in the heart by the girl, and she has a really cool line too. I really like the dialogue and the writing that Kirkman does. It's very efficient. It's not heavy-handed. It's got levity at just the right times, but it doesn't try to just be quippy all the time. It's like, okay, cool, I said a little funny thing and then move on back to serious. Every once in a while we'll do a little funny thing just to kind of have some humor and stuff, but it's definitely not a comedy book at all. Right. And the main girl here who's fighting, we see Master Lun, he's talking to her and he says, oh, you clearly trained at Temple of Flying Fist, but I have never seen you before. How is that possible? We never sought your training because we are the Dragon's Claw. We are the best of the best. And then the family's trying to escape. And Owen's like, wait. And we see, we are beyond you. Oh, you think so? I know so. You should be surprised what we can do when we are not trying to take someone alive. And, Master turns around and says, hurry. He's like just holding them off. And that's where you get the next scene. And she stabs him. And she was not bluffing. We are surprised at what she can do. And then the next panel, it says it all. We don't need any dialogue on this entire page. We see the shock on everyone's face. We see the blood coming out of the Master's mouth and the victory pose, the eyes. of the villain. And this is a great way to set up the danger now of the villain. He's like, dude, they just killed me. Holy crap. What are you going to do now? I love this. This is like I said, this is my favorite issue since the graphic novel. And then we see here Reggie jumping in, you know, diving in with a bunch of, like, it looks like pillows or something. He's just tackling. He's like, get your family away before it's too late, you know? And, you know, it's again, kind of like that Star Wars, you know, that pause of shock, like Luke's like, no, he sees Obi-Wan, and eventually they run. And they show up to Dad's house. But there's still another scene. It's not over.
Not over.
They show up to Dad's house. You can see the look of pity, and we see the bad guys looking over the dead bodies, and they look down and says, "You're gonna help us find them. Understand? Hey, focus at me. Don't look at him," as Reggie's looking over at the dead master. Then we turn the page. "He can't help you." And you see the dead eyes. And then you look down the next panel. He's alive. And you're just like, oh, dude. So again, this goes, and that's the end of the issue. That's a great way to finalize. Like, this was almost a perfect issue for me.
Yeah.
I was. I mean, I've been loving this series so far, and to get a book like this, like if every issue was like this, oh my God. There's so much like I want to like talk about, like you're talking about theory. You and I talked a little bit about before, where I was saying I wasn't quite sure that the dragon was an actual like dragon. And I thought I was theorizing that maybe Master Lun was the dragon. But now I'm not thinking so. I was kind of this issue. I was kind of almost thinking that Owen might be the dragon.
You know what? It's theory crafting time, and I like that one, man. I mean, like the dragon being real. He said the dragon is real, right? But again, you know, monikers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said Bruce Lee, known as the dragon. Maybe it really is Owen. I like the idea of it.
I mean, he's the only one who can throw fireballs.
Stop you. Keep going. Yeah.
He's the only one who can throw fireballs. And I was thinking, I was like, you know, maybe the master is, because I just felt like it was too obvious a thing for Kirkman to just be like, oh yeah, it's an actual real dragon and da-da-da. And I guess it still could be. But my mind went to what would be the way to surprise a reader of it? And it would be like, oh, the master was a dragon the whole time, and it was like a misdirection. And that would be a very, you know, Wayland type of thing to do. And then this issue, I was like, well, maybe it's Owen. And that would explain why he's the only one who can throw fireballs and all this stuff. But then this last page, I'm like, why is the master still alive? Could it be because he's more than human? Or, you know, like, it just, my mind starts going in all these places. So what were your thoughts? Did any ideas come out of your head when you're reading this, or going right now?
Completely. I had a few going in my head while reading. You got my gears going again. Again, part of the reason why I love this show, man. I'm so glad we have more time to theory craft this time. So I've got a few things. One, I do want to point out one thing, and this one thing that I'm going to point out only makes me have some more questions. So remember back in the prelude, and hopefully everybody was here as we were talking about the prelude, but back at the prelude when Master Whelan was showing Owen around that night that Owen couldn't sleep, he went back and he showed him that one master that they had that a statue had been made out of, and Master Whelan told him the tale about how, you know, that this master is like the oldest, you know, one from this temple and is a protector, and you know, it is said that when the temple needs protection, if it could not protect itself, he would return in order to preserve and protect the temple. One of the pillars out there had been damaged in a way that wasn't from like a blunt impact, but looked like it had been burned, as if someone had thrown a fireball and had kind of taken a chunk out of it because it was burned and it had melted the cement. So I'm wondering, like, is Owen this reincarnated being, or was it that because they had said that master had the firepower too? Is he the only other person? Or maybe now I'm thinking, like, is Owen a descendant of that master? I'm
Oh
starting to
yeah.
think down that road as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. One thing I do believe that sort of family and heritage do play a point. We kind of glossed
Mm-hmm.
over a little bit, well, quite a bit actually. There's so much in this book. You should read it yourself. Don't rely on this stream to like fill you in. It's not nearly the same as reading it yourself. But there's a time in the book. Well, I did gloss over this part where, Master's basically telling the history, and he mentions Owen's parents, and basically like it was like, look, they weren't traitors. They didn't turn against. They learned the truth, just like he is, and the Flaming Fist went after them because of that. And so it does seem like some of the theories you and I talked about earlier about how the Scorched Earth are really the good guys and the Flaming Fist are really the bad guys, might be the case. And also bringing the parents back into the story, at least from a lore perspective, seems to highlight the importance of where Owen comes from. Matters. He's not just some schmo who just showed up, orphan on the streets. Like, who his parents were is it matters.
Yep.
Although now that I'm thinking about this, if they talk about in this flashback scene too how the Flaming Fist is there to protect the dragon, the Scorched Earth is to destroy the dragon. So if Owen really was the dragon, the Flaming Fist would want to protect him, and the Scorched Earth would want to destroy him, even though that opens up all sorts of weirdness, like that the hero is the enemy of the actual good guys. They see him as some, I don't know where this can go, but I'm excited. This is a book that I think you can enjoy on many levels. You can just have fun with it, like a family kind of adventure. It feels like a little bit of what you get in Fantastic Four or like The Incredibles is what I've compared it to before, where you get that sort of family adventure style. You get some good kung fu story stuff. Reminds me a lot of Big Trouble Little China in its stylings. But I feel like there's some good lore here to be revealed. I don't think Kirkman is going to, blow our minds the way Jonathan Hickman might. But I do believe he's got some tricks up his sleeve. So any final thoughts from you?
I do. I have one final thought directly linked to the last page, specifically the last panel. Well, let's say the last 2 pages. So, of course, those ninjas, had Reggie, who was at the time we believe was the only one between him and Whelan that was still alive, and they had him pinned down, and she said, you might be wondering, why we kept you alive. And then the lines that you read, you're going to help us find them. Don't look at him, look at me. That don't look at him, look at me didn't mean as much the first time around that I read it. But now going back through it right now and then seeing Whelan, with the look of death and then him looking up, another thing popped into my mind. I wonder if something's going on with Reggie, and maybe even what had just, since Master Whelan is obviously not dead, was that also a ploy because maybe Reggie came from somewhere and they're trying to, extort or pull some information out of Reggie as well? Was that to throw Reggie for a loop too? I mean, because she literally said, don't look at him, look at me. And after Reggie took his eyes off of him and then looked back up at her, that's when Master Whelan looked up. And he didn't look at Reggie because Reggie is on the floor with him. He looked up to them.
Yeah.
To her.
Yeah. Well, the way I interpreted this scene was that Lund doesn't want anyone to obviously to know he's alive, including Reggie. And so it wasn't even until Reggie looked away that he risked looking and stopped playing possum, if you will.
Right.
That's how I interpret this scene, and I think I still do. So I think Reggie is more of a minor player. He doesn't seem to fit in the normal things. Remember when Owen shows up to the temple in the very first book, and
Hmm.
Lun's like, "I'm not gonna train you," like it was only because Owen so impressed him, and like no one ever has, that he took
Hmm.
Owen under his wing. Everyone else has been sort of like, okay, whatever. I don't necessarily have a hard time believing that Reggie would be someone that the master would do much with. But then again, maybe that's the opposite. Maybe it's the fact that Reggie did get to be trained by him. Maybe Reggie is something special, and we just don't know it because he did. He's one of the few who's earned, the tutelage of Wei Lun. Um, I don't know. This is one of those things to keep your eye on as the books unfold and go, what's happening here. Um,
Right.
I
And that's
do
what I
know.
mean. Not that Reggie is so important because he impressed Master Wei Lun, but maybe he pursued Master Wei Lun after he left the Flaming Fist. Maybe Reggie might have later came to the Flaming Fist and they're like, hey, go act like you don't know Kung Fu so you can get closer to him because he is likely going to find Owen. And if he can help us track down Owen. And from the vantage point, like, yes, it's very important. Reggie no longer knew he was alive. And that's kind of what I'm thinking, because if he looks up, that lady can see him if he's still alive. He could see his Master Wei Lun's eyes.
Uh
If
huh.
she just looked down and looked back at Wei Lun, she'd be like, why the hell? He's not dead yet. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, and start chopping him. So I'm like, there's a lot we don't know about Reggie. Reggie could be nobody, or Reggie could be someone very important. The only way to find out is for us to keep reading, and I hope you guys continue to read with us.
All right. That was a good. Whew. I think we really unpacked that. This was one single issue. It's really cool when you can have a comic book, one single comic book, um, that inspires that much talk about it. This is what I wish every single comic was. So hopefully you guys are reading this book too. We don't steer you wrong. we absolutely don't. We got more to talk about though, and we should probably get right on to it. I mentioned a little earlier that probably not going to be blown away with some earth-shattering ideas from Kirkman the way I would Jonathan Hickman, and so that will segue us into uh, our boy Jonathan Hickman with East of West, Volume 3. Now, for those of you who haven't followed all the episodes, one of the things we're doing every episode, we are doing one volume of Jonathan Hickman's East of West series. There are 10 total volumes. We invite you to read along with these volumes. Every 2 weeks, we'll be featuring it. And the concept behind this is to sort of breathe new life into past books. One of the great things that I love about reading new comic books like Firepower is that newness of it, where everyone's discovering it at the same time. You can sit around the water cooler, so to speak, and we can talk about it and theory craft and do all this stuff. But you pick up a book that's like 5 years ago, all the hype's kind of behind it. All the people that were really into it already read it, and you pick it up and go, oh, that was great, I love it. And everyone's like, oh yeah, glad you just discovered it too. But you don't get that same experience. And so we're trying to bring that back a little bit. This is a favorite book of Skip's and many other people that watch us. But I have never read this. I picked these books up a while ago based on recommendations, and we figured this would be a great one to start off with. So Skip's not going to have any theory crafting per se because he's read these multiple times, but he gets to watch me kind of fall in love with this series in real time, and we get to stretch this out over a period of 5 months. We're not just going to bang, that's another thing. You don't bang these books out in a single weekend. You get to draw out that experience and really get to absorb something very special. And this book, I will say, now that I'm through 3 volumes of this, 15 total issues, is something special indeed. Skip, what do you got to say?
I mean, I completely agree. It's well documented. This is my favorite comic book series of all time. Story that has a beginning, middle, and end. My favorite writer, modern day writer, Jonathan Hickman. My favorite modern day artist, and Nick Dragata, my favorite colorist, in Frank Martin Jr., and a darn good letterer, Russ Wooten, all coming together. And it's just awesome. And rereading it again, I've read the book, I think it's 4 times. I don't know if this is my 4th time or my 5th time. I think this might be my 5th. No, this has to be my 4th time reading it through. And still, there was just so much in it to unpack. There's so much story. So going back through it, rediscovering it again, and just continue to enjoying it. It's one of those epics. There's multiple characters. We're jumping back and forth. We're getting some backstory. We're getting some side story. Man, it's just a darn good story. But we're looking at this pizza, Ash, and I'm trying to figure out, should I take a bite from the crust first or from the tip of the pizza? Where would you like to begin?
Well, why don't you just give us a little bit of what's happened so far, synopsis for anyone who might be not watch the previous episodes.
Indeed. I'll condense it more and more for us. But the main thing is we are looking. The apocalypse had started. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse had come down, but their efforts were thwarted by one of the horsemen of the apocalypse had turned against the others. We come to find out that he and that horseman was Death. Death had turned against the other 3, had fallen in love with the woman there, had actually conceived a child, and some people had come in between him and he and his family. Those people that had come in between them are people who are called the chosen. There's new scripture that had been added to the world. The world now knows that there is a higher being, and obviously the presence of the 4 horsemen solidify that in everybody's minds. So these people, these chosen, are a select chosen group from each region, each province of the United States, which is now broken up into about 8 provinces, I believe, 8 sections. They come together to deliberate and to bring about the end of the world, as they now know it must be done because the apocalypse is a real event. And they got in between Death and his wife, who was with child and who bore the child, and they had all been separated. And this is Death's mission, to basically bring his family back together. And he is more than prepared to fight heaven and earth and even the depths of hell to make it happen. And throughout the journey, pretty much at this point, all the players are in their places, and Death was just getting ready to get. He had found his wife. She says, "Hey, I have a nation that I need to lead, that I'm in control of now. The people that wronged us, I will approach them from my political power. I will approach them with war. I will wage war on them. You are a war in yourself, a war. You are death incarnate. You will approach them from the mythical, from the supernatural realm. You go find our son. All right. And if you can do that, we can come back together. But I don't think things will ever be the same." So she's approaching the chosen and attacking them with her military might from her nation, as Death is going through the supernatural angle to find their son. And just as he was about to get the coordinates of where his son is, after finding out his son is still alive, the person that was going to give him that information, Cheveo, a member that was cast out from the Endless Nation, which is the Native Americans in the U.S., he had just gotten sniped by someone from the province of Texas, a former ranger who was I don't want to say reinstated because he took it upon himself, but had returned to service, basically to wage war on the chosen himself for a different reason. And that's where we left off at the end of volume 2, and here we are at the start of volume 3.
Very nice. Very nice. So this is a book that is it's so hard to talk about in a way for me. It's so different. But that's also one of the things that I love about it. If you are looking for a comic and a story and you're like, there's so much out there, this is derivative. This is not that. This has got world building, and it's got plot, and it's got characters. And those are my 3 pillars of fantasy storytelling, which is what comics generally almost always are. And if you're going to tell a fantasy story, when I talk about writing and stuff, I talk about being able to achieve all 3. Generally, most writers focus on 2, characters and plot, and that will carry you through most things. But if you're going to do a fantasy story, which I lump sci-fi into, basically being any story that's not about current reality, right? Or history, like that's factual based. You have to have that world building. And Hickman, his imagination here is so stunning to me. And in the beginning, when I first started reading this, I was like, oh, this is a really ugly book. And I don't mean that in like the illustrations why. I mean just ugly in the sense of like everyone's evil and there's so much violence. And I'm like, oh, what am I reading here? And it kind of still is that way, but it's in a sense that I don't know how to describe it. It doesn't really glorify it. It almost kind of takes a viewpoint for the audience when you're reading it, as if like you almost kind of like have pity for the book. You almost have pity for the characters in this story because, yeah, they're all down this dark path. But where I have a problem in other books and not in this book is that other books almost seem to glorify it per se. Like, look, these are the hero. Like, isn't it like, no, what their actions are kind of despicable. Here, the book doesn't really. It looks at you and goes, yeah, this is all despicable. Make no bones about it. But we're trying to tell a story, and the author earns my trust. The book here, we'll start off. I'll just kind of flip through it, and I'll kind of go just fast so you guys can see what's going on. One of the things that stuck out to me here was we see Archibald. He's talking to this box, and he has this communication, and then the box talks back to him. The hand of the chosen ones. Which one is as it seems? I'm not reading right. The hand of the chosen. I can't read these long. The hand of death or the chosen ones. Which one is it that seems like fun? Or have you forgotten what you've shunned? Is Archibald Chamberlain the man who runs? And he responds, "You're damn right I am." And this is all thematic about how Archibald is basically, to me, is symbolic of one thing: absolute 100% self-centered selfishness. This guy cares about no one or anything but himself. And Hickman uses this part of the story to kind of illustrate that point in a very artistic way, but it also sets up what's in this box we don't get to know. We get to see Ben Solomon, or Bell Solomon, that's his name.
Bell Solomon. Mm-hmm.
This was a kind of confusing scene for me, where he's having this dream, and he talks about, and this tentacle shows up in the bed, and then it kind of goes in through his eyes, and it's all pretty disgusting. Then he wakes up from the dream, but he's not really woken up, and the thing's kind of talking to him, and he's basically feels like he's kind of possessed, and he threatens to take his life, but then he doesn't. And there's something going on here that'll get expounded on later. We jump back over to the prince. What was his name? Prince?
John Freeman.
John Freeman, that's right. Prince. I need to write all these names down. Prince John Freeman. He basically, he kind of runs the kingdom. His dad runs the kingdom, but as you'll find out later, his dad is so kind of above it all. Like, he's so caught up in this whole I'm the king, I don't answer to anybody, that he doesn't do anything, and John kind of runs it in his stead and just kind of reports to him. That was my take. We see some terrorist actions going on against one of the buildings in the Union, where we've seen this corrupt terrorist lady, and she's just disgusted, of course, with the fact that civilians are rebelling. Just like, that basically, again, is one of these ugly people that's just like, the way she talks about how like they're betters, and it's all kind of recharacterizing these main chosen characters who seem to be some of the main characters of this story. We're introduced to the president of is it Texas?
That one is the Confederacy.
No, with Archibald.
Yeah.
Confederacy.
Yeah, yep.
And he's like, Archibald's his right-hand guy, and they've all been summoned to this big meeting at the tower, and it was called by Mao, Zhao Lian. She called this thing, and that was where at the beginning of the book it started. So she gets everyone together, and this is the first time where we see the Endless Nation show up. And this is one of the things I really liked about this book, is it's with the world building. I love the layers of the onion being peeled back. We've heard about the Endless Nation. We know that they exist, but we haven't yet actually seen them. And so now we know what they look like, and they're powerful. So we get some flashbacks with this crazy right-hand lady of the president of the Union, and she's really wicked sadistic. And there's so much to really talk about, but I felt like this issue was a lot of setup. So I'm just kind of gloss over it. They're having a big round table meeting, trying to decide what they're going to do. And apparently some nations are unhappy with other nations, and it looks like there might be war, but some people are trying to avoid war, sensibly so. But we see there's other forces at play. And eventually things go south as an explosion happens. So it's the big reveal. You're like, whoa, what just happened? This big kaboom. And that's what forces everyone to be on edge. I like this next page here. After the explosion, we see the Texas Rangers all draw their guns. We see John Freeman, who we know is a badass from previous issues. He's just like ready. We see the Endless Nation. They're just calm. Shields fire up. They're just sitting there. To me, that just exuded power, right? Where everyone else has got guns and stuff, they just like turn their shields on and just wait calmly. Like they don't feel like any threat at all. And then we see the bloody mess next to the Union president, and basically the guy next to her was blown up. And you look at the panel to the left of her, you see her assistant, and she's like, she's got this look on her face because she shoved that thing you saw in previous panels down his throat, blew him up, and it starts the chaos, right? Because none of these people can trust each other because they're all duplicitous, evil scumbags. And if there's one thing that evil, duplicitous scumbags can't do, it's work together. The only thing that's kept them together thus far is their common uniting around this message, right? And keeping like the holy, like, okay, we can't divert from the message. But inevitably, they also, they're just evil, and they can't tolerate these things. We turn around and we see that the president of the Confederacy is dead, and Archibald is like, treachery is a form of politics I understand quite a bit, Lady Mao. And you're like, wait, how did he die? Well, we'll get to that. But Mao came here for a fight. She's armored up. She said in the beginning that, people were going to die by her blades. She's got something to say. She says, you think this is retribution? This is not retribution. Understand, I do not care how you people die, but rest assured, by my hand, it will be bloodier and have much higher cost. The only real question I ask now is, why not today? Stop. Zhaolian, House of Mao, you came to power through regicide, the murder of your father. I knew him and knew the great game. Now I wonder, how well did he teach it? As there is deception here. So we get a pause, and they start to go on and explain, some of the anomalies and things that are going on. And of course, the guy gets shot by Bell, who's been corrupted by this beast thing, right, that we saw earlier.
Chevelle.
What's that?
That's Chevelle.
Well, yeah, but that's a little too soon. too soon. We'll find out that it's Chevelle. And of course, like I said, all this duplicitous stuff, there must be war. So you can see the aftermath is the final page, as Mao walks away, and just yeah, these people are not getting along. And so that's where the rest of the trade goes through. That was the setup. And we cut back to where the last one left off. This is where we kind of expected we would start, right? Because this is where the last one left off. We get that 100-mile shot, as I like to call it. And we see Death like, no, and then zoom forward. And he's like, that's one. And I love the dog. It's woof. Can't say I agree, Red. No such thing as a perfect shot. Still, not too bad. In my whole life, there's probably been only 3 or 4 people that I've known who could have made a mark like that. And bless their lethal souls, they've all long departed the mortal plane. Bam! Thwap! And you're like, what? Arr! Who the... Looks down the sight, and it's Death with a pistol. He's like, that can't possibly be. Thwap! Gets shot again. He's like, oh, scatter, Red. But he's not even dismayed. A normal person would just be like, oh, shit, run. He's like, you still got a lock on that position? Woof. Good enough. Recalibrate from this location and load up something heavy. Ready? And then we cut over to Death, and he says, incoming. Crow? Wind's picked up. It's going to miss us by 50 feet or so, but it looks like a high-yield round. Sit tight. I'll handle the spillover. Boom! And this is Death looking down. That's right. I see you, and you see me. What the hell? Get a good look. I'm coming for you. And then they're just like, Death, wait, we're not done. Da 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 da. And but the Ranger, he's not dismayed. He's like, gets on his thing. Wicked thing happening all around, Crow. Stay here. Do what you must. That's damn sure what I'm gonna do. And we get this awesome full page here where Death and the Ranger are just charging at each other. And this book, this was on like Donkey Kong. I was getting excited. I was like, oh my God, because we know how badass the Ranger is. And I get a feeling like the Ranger's not going to just meet a simple end. You know, like Death's just going to dispatch him and move on. I feel like this guy is introduced for a reason. And so I'm like, what's going to happen? He's not going to kill Death. Death's like, what? I don't know. And we get really cool action scenes. And they have a fight. They have a fist fight. They're just two badasses. Meanwhile, we're interject back with Crow and Wolf and the death of the father. They explain that it basically, the death of the father was kind of like a blood pact. It kind of summoned something unnatural. And that's why they were trying to get Death not to leave. And so basically, Wolf has to pay a price to try to stop what's going on. And as the fist fight between Death and the Ranger goes on, something interrupts it. And we see the Endless Nation is headed to war. And we're like, oh, damn. So then meanwhile, in true cinematic fashion, we cut over to other things. We see the Confederacy, where the death of the president, and some people are coming to Archibald to be like, we got to select a new president. Who do you think? And he gives his suggestions. And of course, he's playing everyone because they're like, well, actually, we were thinking about you. And he's like, oh, really? You know, like this wasn't his whole machination the whole time, right? And it comes off really sly. I really like that. And you get these little red panels, which are flashbacks. And I really like the coloring here to kind of cue you in between present day and flashback. I like the red as it highlights the treachery of what's going on. It's very emotional. We see this little ring thing that he has on him. And the whole time he's telling his grandkids this story. The way it's presented, he's like, hey, you want to hear a story about how your father saved me? And one of the things that really stood out to me, Skip, was the theme of loyalty. And how you can only really have betrayal if you have loyalty, right? You can't betray someone that you're not loyal to, right? I can't just go betray some dude on the street I've never met. Betrayal only comes from someone that you've been loyal to. And Hickman hammers this without exposition, without, preaching at you or anything. He just tells this little story. Archibald tells to these kids about how they're in this war and all this stuff, and he was dying, and then their dad, his granddad, like they came and he saved Archibald, and how Archibald devoted his life to him and all this stuff. And meanwhile, you're seeing these red panels, like this one down here, did you see this coming, old friend? I don't think you did. And it's like, of course you couldn't see it coming, because no one is that freaking treacherous unless your name's Archibald.
Yep.
And then you cut over to one of these white pages that Hickman likes to throw in every once in a while, and he makes his little point. And he's like, when we are loyal, it is because we find it useful. And one of the things we've established about Archibald is he's only in it for him. Everything he does, every single thing, is for himself. And that includes even being loyal to someone who saved his life. So I thought, I really liked that. That was probably my favorite issue of the whole thing. There's so much going on in this book. So much. This is so dense. I love this book. I love the series so far. We get to see Ezra resurface, and he's becoming even more of a monster. We get to see the Endless Nation and their ships, and they decide to change course on their plan of action. And he's like, I got a new target. We'll see what that is. The Horsemen show up, and they're using Ezra for their own purposes. Again, playing off of the themes of the last book, where it's like, you're part of the message, right? You're a good follower, aren't you? And he's like, yeah. So he's a slave, and they use him, and we find out that the Endless Nation's motive, like, they're gonna blow up the tower. That's what's the name of that place?
The White Tower and the Union.
Yeah.
You're talking about Armistice.
Armistice. That's it.
Yeah.
So Armistice is the place that's central to all the nations. That's where they. It's kind of like the neutral zone. They built the tower for the Pilgrims, which don't show up anymore. But it's like this holy symbol. So that Endless Nation, surprisingly, they had mentioned, we're gonna deal a more like spiritual blow. Or, I forget what they said. Some meaningful blow, and then I didn't know what their target was, and now you get reveal like, oh, it's the tower, which, by the way, that just happens to be where the Horsemen are, and they're just laughing as the tower is getting blown up, but they're like, that was great, yeah, but the place is coming down. Are we taking that as a sign? Oh, absolutely. The tree of chaos has taken root, and we're off to hunt the beast. Come with us, Ezra. So, again, this is why they're using Ezra. He's the I guess, holder of the message. Death and the Ranger have kind of put aside their differences, because the Ranger says, I can help you track your son. So with his dog Red, he takes him to the forest area where that pit is, where the beast has been. We see that the children, the Horsemen, are there because they're trying to hunt the beast. And so he's like, I got to leave you, Death. You're on your own from here. Hope you find your son. We cut back to Mao, and we get some backstory with her and her father. We get some cool stuff with some death. Oh, and man, okay, I have to tell you what, the number one thing I loved about this particular book, or this whole volume, was the beast and the kid. The Horsemen are chasing down. They want to destroy the beast. My take is that they want to destroy the beast not for who he is, but because of who his father is. And I think War is kind of fascinated with the idea that he's just some anomaly, some monstrosity, doesn't belong, and he must be expunged. But the kid is not hopeless, or he's not helpless, and he's prepared. As we've seen previous issues, he's this ball thing, this computer has been teaching him and raising him his whole life. The boy ends up giving him a name. He's called Balloon, so that's what I'm going to refer to him. And Balloon goes with him, and the beast systematically is taking him out. Like he's just cold and calculating. And there's some really great dialogue he has with Balloon about the very fact that he doesn't have, he's never known anyone's names, and they talk about it's because There's no moral connection to that because now everything can just be treated as information. Um, like he talks about it here. He's like, to put it bluntly, you didn't want morality impeding my logic. Names convey humanity. They inject compassion. And then the balloon's like, yes, that is correct. Very good. But does all life have value? And the balloon says, yes. And what's this one's life worth? And so he answers that it's not very much. And so, boom, he uses balloon like a morning star and just caves in. That was Conqueror's head. Conquest. That's it. Conquest head. And then, meanwhile, missiles are incoming, and he's on the run. And he knows he can escape, so he lets the missiles keep coming. And they show up. They find Conquest on the ground, and like, what's going on? He's like, rrr, rrr, rrr. He can't talk. And then eventually he finds his voice, and he says, "We were wrong." What? We were wrong. He is the beast. And then there comes the missiles. He is the message. Ah, boom. He is our master. And you're like, oh, damn. And then little boy's floating up with the balloon. He's like, whoa. And an important thing to notice is that this boy is wearing a mask, right? Some like weird face shield type thing. It's not just for looks. So we see Death, sees the explosion. He knows that's where his son is. He's like, oh no. And the boy's having a conversation. He's like, oh, I think you should have a name, or I should have a name too. And through their dialogue, they discover, he's going to be called Babylon, which I'm not going to, just for, to the sake of time, I'm not going to explain everything. You really should be reading these books. If you have, you know why. And this 2-page spread here is among my favorites. You will be Babylon, the man without a father, without a mother. You will build a new city, but yours will be more than just brilliant. It will burn and set the world aflame to purify it so that your city might stand forever. And then we see Death, who's just like heartbroken because he thinks his son was blown up. But he's safe. He's floating around. Whee, in the balloon. Babylon, I like it. Babylon and his trusty balloon. Yes, you can trust me. Others will lie to you, try to deceive you. But I never will. Let me show you. See? Look, Babylon. Look at the world. Look at what the people have made it. Oh, you were right. There's nothing to save here. It is dark. It is death. You're like, oh. We have to destroy this awful place and then build something better. And I've talked about this on previous episodes, Skip. One of my favorite sayings that I made up myself. Mm-hmm. I've lived my life by is this saying, how do you know when you're being deceived? And I love the theme here. This boy is the beast, but is he really evil? Right. Or is he just deceived? And the real evil is the cold, calculating machine who doesn't value humanity, because there can't be. Without morality, life is meaningless. And just like thematically, biblically, the beast is just a tool of Satan, the dragon. The balloon here is the one kind of pulling the strings, literally and physically here. And that was I love that wrap up, that scene. And that is the end of the volume. And it wasn't quite as exciting as the previous one to me, but some of the reveals, I love it, where the story of the beast. I love knowing that the beast character does have innocence, that he's I gotta stop. You it's time for you to talk.
And you're hitting all the notes, man. Like, you're hitting all the things that are why I love this book so much. Even earlier on, I had made mention, and I know we hadn't gone deep enough yet for you to make heads or tails of of the full theme of it. But that was the thing. I was like, this, like, earlier on there was huge hints, that this child was, as any other child that comes into the world, pure, untouched, morally. And, with, they needed a beast. And in a way, I mean, I think it's more apparent now. They were manufacturing one, out of innocence. We had seen that he had been trained. They had been educating him on all this different information and whatnot. The Initially, the nice thing is, though, earlier on we also saw that the kid was hip to what they were doing. So as Archibald and Bell, back in, I believe it was volume number 1, I think it was the end of volume number 1, had gone to the lair, and we're watching him go through his trainings. As their attention turned and they kind of left, he started talking to the balloon like, "Hey, are they still there? Are they gone? Or are we out in the clear?" And then we got to see that, like, he knew he was being brainwashed essentially, and he kind of had started to develop a plan even then. And now we see his plans for escape, are not only, were essentially were realized, him being free. But that was the same thing. That was what I loved so much about the twist and the turn, is that even though he was free, he still wasn't fully free. His body had been freed from that layer, but not his mind. He was being deceived. He was being lied to. And deception is a big theme of volume 3, all throughout it. Hickman is a very thematic writer, and especially in this book, to your point, he's not preaching so much to people, but he is laying out themes objectively, and kind of letting people see. And then some he leans into a little bit more than others. Obviously from volume 2,
Mm-hmm.
the theme of justice and mercy, which was the story of the ranger. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Babylon is again one of my favorite characters. When I had purchased the book, I purchased it from the artist, and very nice gentleman. You get drawings of a character if you purchase a book, whether it's a trade paperback or the big omnibus.
Oh
And
wow.
the first one that I got was Death, which I love, is awesome. And the second one that I got was Babylon, because I enjoyed Babylon so much. And then of course, now that book 3's out, once everything clears up and I'm able to go to cons and stuff again, I will get Mao as a third, so I can complete the family.
Ah,
Um,
nice.
but yeah, but themes are a big thing, and it was deception. There was deception, from Archibald deceiving President. I think his name was something Hart, Burkhart, or whatever, of the Confederacy, and poisoning him, and then the deception of Doma Lux, Madame LeVay's assistant, shoving that bomb down the throat of I think we did get his name, but I can't remember his name. But down the throat of that dignitary that was there at the White Tower when they had all come together, when Mao had kind of summoned them all, and then he ended up having the device inside of him. He didn't know, because Doma was like, a dominatrix. He was just like, being her slave or whatever, and she just
Right.
shoved that device down him, and she detonated it. And war that they knew was coming, you know, through deception, actually got escalated faster because of deception. There's just multiple, and then now death. And actually, the interesting thing is, when it came to death, there was no deception. Death's story was pure. He and the Ranger ran into each other, and that's actually where they came to an understanding. Like, the Ranger had been done wrong. We had seen that before. Death had been done wrong. Both of them effectively had lost their families, so they came to an understanding. And then and then their journeys went from being apart to coming together for a minute, and then they forked off again, and they're going to go on their separate journeys again. But deception is a really big theme. And then Babylon, even though he had gotten free, he's being deceived by the balloon, by his computer program within the balloon. So deception was the theme of this. That's how Hickman set up all of this to roll it to end year 1. If you have the omnibus, this is where year 1 ends, and then you roll into year 2. But that was the theme of this whole trade: deception. There was so much deception going on across multiple parties. And now the question is, who, we know Archibald is part of the deception, but there's some other parties involved, and we have to find out later in the book who is teaming together to escalate things past this. Because at this point, I think we're starting to see that there's only a few people that really give a toot about the message. Obviously, the Horsemen do, and obviously Ezra did. But if you start looking at the Chosen, the the ones that don't believe it in as much, like Archibald, and maybe some of the other ones, we'll find out, they're the ones that are going past it. They have, again, like Archibald, like Ash said, their own selfish agenda that they're trying to get through, and they will use the message, they will use a president, they will use a child, they will use anything that they can at their you know uh, at their access to accomplish their selfish and terrible goals and agendas. And man, I just love the theme of it all, and keeping the theme consistent while working in so many different parts and elements and groups and interests to convey it. Very, very, very. It's masterful writing.
This is very. I really loving this book. I thought I was gonna love it when I started it, because all the people that have talked about it are all people whose opinions that I very much value. And then when I put them all together, because sometimes not everyone sees alike. There's obviously there's books that I love that you don't, and vice versa. But when I do the whole Rotten Tomatoes approach, when I go, okay, well, let me also see what this person thinks is, I'm like, oh, okay. So if the chances of all of these people liking it and then me not are going to be slim to none. But I wasn't sure still what to expect. It's called East of West. I know it's a apocalyptic story, but that's it. Like, I have no idea. And so when I started reading it, I was like, oh, this is strange. And it took me a while to acclimate. But now that I'm really, really falling for it. I don't know where it's going to go, and I'm not used to like reading stories where there's not a hero, but maybe there will be a hero. We'll see. I don't know where it's going to go. There's a really cool line in here that I wrote down in my notes, and I was trying to find it, but I can't find it in the book, that I loved, where it was talking about Babylon, and when he was like breaking free, and we start to realize that he's being duped by the balloon.
Yeah.
And the line was, then tell me, what's really the difference between a hyper-accurate simulation and reality itself? Nothing. And you're just like,
Right.
oh, damn. I just felt like when I was reading it, that hit me with a sledgehammer. I was like, Hickman is trying to tell me something, I believe. Could be a red herring, but I'm like, oh, like, is this just basically saying that the beast's reality, because obviously we find out he's living in a virtual reality, the balloon's controlling everything he sees and hears, I'm assuming. Is that just basically meaning him? Or is it meaning all of us? Is this a sort of thing where, is this world a simulation?
Right.
That's where my brain starts going. I'm like, is that the reason why things are so effed up? Is that the reason why machines seem to run things? Like, I don't know and the good thing is I still have no idea where Hickman's actually going. He's not being, right. He's throwing clues out there, but I still can't make sense of them. And I'm like, right. I love that. I love the idea that I'm going to be able to finish this book and come back and reread it and see clues that I missed and go, oh, I totally didn't see that the first time because I didn't understand what I was seeing.
Right.
And I feel like
I think page 108 was what you're looking for. Page 108.
Let's see. Browse pages 108. There it is. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, there's a lot of text I don't want to read right here, but basically the balloon is telling him, be careful. Your body hasn't ever been used before. We've used like stimulus to keep the muscles from atrophy. Blah blah blah. But just take it easy. And then the boy is just like, well, aren't you like the best of the top of the line system? Like, why would you fail? And he's like, it's true, I am top of the line. And then the boy says, then tell me, what's really the difference between a hyper accurate simulation and reality itself? And then the white page says, nothing. And I like the way that he tells it here, because it's not like the ball is answering nothing, because we can't rely on what the balloon says, because we know it's a bit great deceiver.
Right.
But it's the author himself, the white, nothing. So
And then I want to point out, because I had talked about, I think it was in volume 1, I talked about, hey, as we're reading along, everybody that's reading with us, pay attention to the titles of the issues. We don't always get titles. We used to get them a lot more back in the day with comics. I remember in the 90s and such, like, we would, not always, but we'd get some. But that's a big thing. So right after it says nothing, the answer to that question that Babylon had posed, the white page says nothing, and then we get the page for the name and the title of the issue, and it's called Awake Babylon. Oh,
yeah.
like, so it's same thing. Like, is he awaking from the simulation into the real world? Is it the vice versa? Like, what is it? And then even still, like, he, like, awaking in a way is escaping, right? Like, you can look at it if you'd like to, like, okay, me waking up, me becoming awake is me coming out of my dream state, escaping from my dream state back into the analog world, the real world. But after he escaped from, where he got most of his simulations and whatnot out of that layer and then into the real world, was he fully awake? Because he's still within the simulation, so to speak, because the balloon is lying to him.
Mm-hmm.
Just themes, just
Yeah.
layered,
No,
like I said, peeling
I'm
back the onion,
I'm with you. And there's another white page right after the title where it says, "What is a name but a very specific label?" And that to me is kind of telling too, because in this book, all of the characters, the way Hickman's writing style is he feels like he's approaching every character as a theme unto itself. One of my favorite movies
Right.
of all time is a film called Seven Samurai. I'm probably familiar with it. And one of the great things I love about that movie, that I've since learned and I've applied it to like story writing and stuff, is how Akira Kurosawa used the Seven Samurai, and each one embodies one of the 7 tenets of Bushido. So it's very thematic. It's like more than just the story of these samurai who save a village from bandits. It's also exploring like what is it, what is Bushido, what does it mean, and things like that. And this book has a similar feel like that, where Death isn't just a guy named Death. He is Death. He embodies, like you were talking about before, where he makes up with the ranger. They put their differences aside and stuff, because he's not about being duplicitous. He's not about having ulterior agendas. Like he's singularly focused on like one thing about like who he is. I don't know if I'm really putting this into words accurately, but I feel so far like all the characters seem to be really embodying like a singular idea, and then being sort of a metaphor for that idea.
Exactly.
Am I off? Or
No, you're absolutely right. It's strong, and especially when have essentially the main character in this story, when it is Death, the name is Death, and it is the embodiment of death. Everything from there, it's kind of a ripple, or kind of its own unique take on that concept of who they are, and what plays out and what they represent. It goes along with that motif that Kurosawa, had made so popular in Seven Samurai. Definitely. Now, and I'm also open. I know the theory thing is a little difficult, being that I had read through it, but if there is any questions that you wanted to throw at me, and same thing with the chat, and I can easily answer in a way that won't be spoiled, I'm completely open to those, or I'm also open to whatever other dialogue that we wanted to. And people in the chat, feel free. Marania has been great talking about colors and different color themes thematically. Eric Breen showing up, of course. Our buddy Comic Quirks with Jimmy is there, and Dominic Powell. So anything you guys want to throw out, these are the last few minutes of the stream before we wind down and share some other titles quickly that we have been reading just to throw out there. So feel free. But Ash, anything? Is there anything that you have?
No, I feel like I've been exploding with just, goo goo gaga over these books. There's so much. I mean, I have a slight lament in the fact that East of West is over and having to cover 5 issues in the same time span we covered, just one issue of Firepower, because there's so much in these books. I feel like I'm just not doing it justice, and I'm blabbing out as much as I can to talk about these books, and it's probably information overload. Maybe I'm doing too much, but there's just so much that I want to talk about. Like, the time is not enough. I hope you guys are reading this. If you have read the book like Jimmy has, or if you're just now reading the book like I am, please put in the chats things that you guys loved about it. Definitely would like to, address anything that you guys, are enjoying or questions you have. I don't know what more I can really say about these books. Like I said, it's world building at its finest. It's super plot heavy, which I love. I love a cerebral, plot heavy book that keeps me guessing where it's going to go, that has lots of changes, lots of reveals. Neither of these books actually are going to disappoint you in that aspect, as far as like having reveals. Firepower, of course, is a much simpler book. I don't mean that in a defamatory way. It's just, that's what it is, and it's a good thing. It's like a Zen garden, right? It's not meant to be complex and ornate. It's meant to just be simple and refined, and its beauty. On the other hand, this book is like an MC Escher painting. When I talk about East of West, it's got all sorts of complexities, mind-bending ideas and things, and makes you just have to stare at it for hours. If you don't know who MC Escher is, he's the famous illustrator who likes to draw all the impossible perspectives and stares going in and up and down of themselves and so forth. He's one of my favorite artists. But I'm really wondering where this book is going to go. I have like no idea, Skip. I have no idea. It's a super fun journey though, and I really respect that I can't guess. Like I get really annoyed when I read something and I'm like, oh, they're going to do this next. Oh, okay, now they're going to do this next. Like, I have no idea. And I love the fact that Hickman is taking characters that I probably should despise, right? They're not good people. But I'm fascinated. It's almost like in the same way that you love a good villain, Like, I shouldn't like Darth Vader. He's a bad dude, right? But I love Darth Vader. Right. It's the same thing kind of here, where I'm like, I don't. Death is a bad dude, but he's kind of a cool bad dude. And then even the Chosen, there's something I admire in them, and maybe it's because of the themes. I think I admire the themes so much. I'm a big dystopian person. As far as I love dystopian fiction, and this book, by the way, is total dystopia. That's another thing that I'm loving about it. But one of the things I love about dystopian future fictions are how they explore thematically the problems of authoritarianism, of corruption, of just selfish, self-centered evil. The way like Archibald, people always looking out for themselves, or the idea of like, we're gonna do good for you. You need us to look after you. You need someone to tell you how to live your life. All of those things are in this book, in various forms or another. And I think when I see these characters, like even the the person who runs the union, that girl, that woman,
Oh, Madame LeVay,
Madame
President,
LeVay. Yeah,
Madam
she's
President
just
LeVay.
disgusting. But there's something like about all these characters. I'm just like how she just embodied um, what she was willing to do to sell herself for power. Like that was kind of the theme that I got from her.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and it's disgusting, but I'm so fascinated by Hickman's ability to spin metaphors and put these themes on a canvas. Um,
Yeah. Speaking of canvas, something else that I wanted to highlight, because we are talking about the story, we're talking about the writer. I continue to say that this is also done by my favorite artists, and the character design is something that I just enjoy so much. Mao, transitioning out of her, her kind of her royal garb over into her, war master garb, and like the big old thing, like all the red and the big old thing that was around her neck, which is super cool. Even when they were going to start to go to war, and in order to mark her, the war master's faces beneath her, she drew blood from her belly, a cut, cut straight through it, took some of the blood with her hand, and then gave them the palm print on their faces, and that's how the chiefs of the war masters are marked, by the blood of, of the queen, or premier is what they call her, from there. But like that also being a character's design as well. um just all of like all of those things, and especially like I talked about Babylon. I love Babylon's, like it's futuristic and it's technical, and he's got the balloon as well as an accessory, something that's very kidly. I always think of, when I think of kids as characters, I think about them like with a bike or a basketball or something like that. That's his accessory. And then even like the visor, which is like a kid's cap
yeah,
almost, like over his head, covering his head. All of the character design, as well as the craft designs. You showed a page of the Endless Nation finally coming through with their ships. We had heard that they're powerful and that they develop tech that they sell to the rest of the rest of the US, actually really the world, and part of why they have such might and such esteem. To see like their tech and their ships and everything was like amazing. And even their garb when they show up, and what would be a head of feathers is now like this gold, these gold angles, and like odd things and feathers too. Just all really well
yeah. I
done
like
with
the
character design.
juxtaposition of the
Hmm.
technology on the
Right.
natives, because you're used to thinking of natives as like primitives and
Right.
wearing animal skins and so forth, but they're the most technically advanced, and they're like all
Right.
cybernetic, and you're like, whoa. Dominic Powell makes a comment. He says, one of the things I appreciated about this series is the themes Hickman is exploring through the plot. They get people thinking, and it doesn't beat them over the head, especially exploring the politics. And I have to say amen to that. I think that's really well said, Dominic. There's a difference between like art and propaganda. And I think one of the things I'm loving here is that Hickman is doing art. He's putting something out there that has meaning, but he's not trying to tell you what to think. Propaganda tries to tell you what to think, right? Some propaganda can be good, right? Buy more war bonds, right? That whole thing, like back in World War II, like that's helpful. Like, but regardless whether you agree with the propaganda or you disagree with the propaganda, it's always trying to tell you what to think. Hickman here doesn't leave me with any sense that he's trying to say this is how you should think. He's just trying to say this is how people are. This is the nature of things. Here's sides to it. You walk away with your own impression, and I really respect that.
Absolutely. And that's a great thing to point out about the propaganda piece, because that is something that he, like I said, out the gate, the Nightly News, his very first book, he like turned propaganda on its ear. He made a mockery of it. In a sense, it was a motif that he would have these things in there. There'd be, he'd give a little bit of a story, and then there'd be the data pages that we've, become accustomed to, for better or for worse. And it would be like, 93% of people, with this, take this, and 93% of people that are on antidepressants did this. And then at the very bottom in the corner, it'd be like, I'm trustworthy. I pay my taxes and I treat my wife very well. Such and such, like just like weird little things, like, kind of him mocking it, almost like a graffiti artist, kind of does caricatures he took propaganda and graphic design and had done that. Again, just like you said, Ash, putting it out there and showing the themes and saying you make of it what you will, but here's the players, here's the story, here's the game. They're all set up on the board. You know, watch them all come together, watch them tear each other
Right.
apart.
Dominic also says it's like people being fascinated with serial killers and other types of criminals. We know they're bad people, but we're curious to know why they turned out the way they are. And Marani responds, "Agreed, Dominic. I want to know why, but I also don't want it to turn into a poor criminal. I pity them because their life is so sucky, and try to make them sympathetic and not villainous." Yeah, I agree with those thoughts. It's interesting to kind of just explore themes sometimes, whether you agree with them or not. I like the comment that you guys happen to bring up criminal, because we're going to wrap things up right now, but it gives me a little chance to segue into this little book called Criminal. As you guys know, there's a series been out there, independent books by Ed Brubaker, who's a big fan, who Skip is a big fan of. Also, people, friends of the channel like Eric Breen, big fans. And they're getting me in on Criminal as well. And there's a new Criminal-esque series coming out. I'm not sure if it's actually officially Criminal or not, but I'm calling it that, by Ed Brubaker, called Reckless. I just want to plug it. It's coming out, I believe, on December 22nd. Is that right, Skip?
About right.
It's mid-December. And it's called Reckless. And it's going to be a original graphic novel, but it's going to be a series of graphic novels. This is something we don't often see. It's not going to just be a one-shot. So the first book comes out in December. The second book comes out in a month or two, and then I think the third book comes out a month or two after that.
December
now
22nd.
I haven't nailed anything down 100% with Skip right now, so I'm kind of putting him a little bit on the spot, but I'm committing to buying the book. I'm pretty sure Skip, my man's going to buy it, because I saw his hardcover Criminal collection. So I'm thinking we're going to be doing hopefully a one-shot show on that. Skip, you game for that?
Of course.
Awesome. So I'm going to that's the whole point of this, is give you guys a heads up about this book. If you want to get in on it and participate with us on the show, be aware about it, get it. I'm going to get it. Skip's going to get it. Eric Breen probably will get it. We'll see. And we'll have a talk just about that book. It'll probably be on a one-shot show. Stay tuned for future news, but I want to put that on your guys' radar. And hopefully we can have more fun reading good comics and talking good comics. Any final words from you, Skip?
Final words. I'm just going to throw out some books real quick. Richard Stark's Parker, adapted and illustrated by Darwin Cook, is a book that I'm reading and really enjoying. Kind of in the vein of Criminal by Ed Brubaker, old hard-boiled story set before in the past. Cool characters. One I saw was modeled after Jim Steranko, who is one of my favorites. One of my favorite people, artists, and characters in comics, period. Kind of the godfather of graphic novels in a sense as well. Crone, written by Brian Culver, and lines and art by Justin Greenwood. Colors by Brad Simpson. Justin Greenwood and Brad Simpson, two people that are good buddies. They're friends. They're good people. Awesome art. Good story. Another thing, kind of a flip on a character that we're all familiar with, but I won't say who. Check it out. Cyberpunk 2077, writer Cullen Bunn, artist, I don't have it in front of me. Awesome. Obviously, it happens in the Cyberpunk 2077 world, which is that game that we've been hearing about and waiting for, that is finally being released on Wednesday. So there's a few days before. There's, I think, 4 issues out now, or I think the 4th comes out on Wednesday. So check it out. It's really good. Art is awesome. Coloring is great. Story is well written. And then finally, I'm also reading, this is not a new book, it's an old book, but Akira, the manga by Katsuhiro Otomo. Incredible book. I'm sure a lot of people here have seen the movie or the anime, and probably some people here wouldn't be surprised I've read the manga, but it is an incredible epic. I got all 6 volumes, all 6 omnibus, and I'm going through it with some buddies of mine, and it is incredible. So continue to read good indie books, good comics. Continue to to join this stream and be entertained by us and joining on the conversation. Handing it over to my man Ash to take us home. Ash, your final words.
Hey, that Akira book you're reading, how far are you into it?
I am a little bit past halfway of the first omnibus.
Oh, okay. I'll talk to you after the stream about that. I, of
Okay.
course, am reading my favorite books. I'll just mention them here. I'm reading Oblivion Song. This is one of my favorite indie books that are out there, written by Robert Kirkman, guy who writes Firepower. It's a fantastic book. It's very different than Firepower in the sense that it's a little bit more cerebral. It's a lot more like mystery. What's going on? What's with this other world called Oblivion? Who are these aliens that are part of it? Blah, blah, blah. And it's constantly a reveal, like almost the way a mystery does, where you keep getting information fed to you. You don't have the whole picture of the story. Slowly over time, it unravels. He does that with a science fiction setting, and I'm really engaged with it. Another book that I'm huge into is Birthright. This is by Josh Williamson. Skip and I talked behind the scenes about doing this one on the show. However, there's only 5 issues left. It's currently on issue 45. Highly recommend picking this up in trade format. I've covered it once way back on the Ash and Bat show. I read it live on my Storytime live stream. I can't speak about this book highly enough. It's not a world-changing book. It's just a really fun fantasy adventure story that spins a lot of common tropes on their head, which I kind of appreciate. The crux is, what if there was a prophesized hero that was, prophesized to save the world, the common trope that we all have, and he failed. An evil one. What would that story be? So I really like how they spin that. There's more to it than that, but it's just a big over-the-top action fantasy type thing I would love to see made into a movie. Dominic says, yeah, more Birthright love. And lastly, this is not limited to all the indies I'm reading, but just the ones that I want to talk about right now. Ascender. I just can't promote this one enough. It is the closest thing that I've read in comics to Star Wars that's not Star Wars. It very much reminds me about all the things I love about Star Wars. You have a youthful protagonist who's innocent, has a coming-of-age story. You have a little bit of technology with droids and robots and lasers and spaceships and stuff. And you got a little bit of fantasy mysticism powers. And you've got different planets and different aliens and things you can go on in the world. And most importantly, you have a diverse cast of characters that all have their own unique personalities. Lots of fun banter between the characters. They don't always get along, but they kind of end up loving each other like a family, and they have a common goal and interest and a big adventure. And it's just, like I said, it's what I love about Star Wars. It's beautifully illustrated by Justin Nguyen with watercolor coloring on it. It's a sight to be seen. It's written by Jeff Lemire. Love it. It's not very far in if you want to jump in on it. The first 2 trades are out. That's what I want to talk about. So I want to thank you guys. I want to thank my man Skip here for doing the show with me. He makes it a pleasure. You guys are the cherry on top. And we look forward to talking to you guys in 2 weeks, where we'll be covering, volume 4 of East of West. And I'm not sure what our main book will be. Hopefully a new issue of Decorum will be out by then. We can never be sure. So if it is, that'll be Decorum. If not, we'll have an alternative for you. And until then, read good comics. Oh, and a real quick little plug out, Wednesday, my boy here, Jimmy in the stream, he's got a stream called Sinister Six. You can see him in chat. Check it out.